Even if you love a little luxury, that doesn't mean it's always easy to afford it. That's why I love Quince. Quince offers a range of high-quality items at prices within reach, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And more importantly, according to Quince, they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices, plus premium fabrics and finishes. My cashmere sweater from Quince has become a real staple in my wardrobe. Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/weirdest for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/weirdest to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/weirdest. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. You can even score same-day appointments. I was really psyched to see ZocDoc come up as one of our sponsors because I've genuinely been using it for years. It makes my life so much easier. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/weirdest to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/weirdest. ZocDoc.com/weirdest. Do you like your money? Unfortunately, traditional big wireless carriers like your money too. So if you're tired of spending hundreds on big wireless bills, bogus fees, and free perks, Mint Mobile might just be right for you, with plans starting from $15 a month. I'm not currently a Mint Mobile customer, but I'm definitely checking it out because $15 a month is a lot less than what I'm currently paying at a big wireless carrier. If you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/weirdest. That's mintmobile.com/weirdest. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5GB plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
At Popular Science, we report and write dozens of science and tech stories every week. And while most of the stuff we stumble across makes it into our articles, we also find plenty of weird facts that we just keep around the office. So we figured, why not share those with you? Welcome to The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week from the editors of Popular Science.
I'm Rachel Feltman.
I'm Laura Bisis.
I'm Lauren Leffer.
Lauren, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you back on.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here after years away.
Yeah, it's been years. Yeah. Why don't you tell listeners what you're up to these days?
Yeah, of course. So currently I am a contributing writer for Popular Science and for Scientific American. I also freelance for other outlets. But yeah, I write about all sorts of different tech and science and environmental subjects. I am like a perennial generalist and I can't help it. No one can make me focus on any one thing. They just can't do it.
I am with you on that. I didn't become a science writer because I wanted to focus on one thing.
No, then I would have
focused on one thing. I could have been a scientist.
Yeah, exactly. I just would have stayed in research.
Yeah. Well, it's great to have you, and we are psyched to talk about some weird things today. So on The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week, we start by each offering up a little tease about some kind of fact or story that we found in the course of reading, writing, reporting, etc. And we decide which one we just absolutely have to hear about first. Then once we've all had time to spin our little science yarns, we reconvene and decide what the weirdest thing we learned this week actually was, in like a chatty, non-competitive way, where sometimes we don't even discuss what the weirdest thing was. Sometimes the show's just over, and that's fine.
I'm here
Laura,
to win.
Yeah. We're here to make friends. We really are. Laura, what's your tease?
Bats can surf.
Of course they can. Right.
Why not?
Good news.
Yeah.
I feel like a surfing bat that's a great vibe because you're a little spooky.
Little spooky, but also very chill and relaxed.
Yeah, very chill,
and one with
sporty.
The ocean.
Yeah.
I'm picturing the bat in sunglasses, even though presumably it's nighttime.
Of course. So. And in the ocean, or maybe goggles.
Oh, cute.
Little swim cap.
I know nothing about surfing, if that wasn't apparent.
My tease is that I'm going to talk about a submarine sandwich. And I'm from South Jersey, so you know I'm not talking about a hoagie. This is something else.
I was going to say hoagie. You knew it was coming. Come on.
Lauren, what's your tease?
My tease is one sentence, simple. What if pollution was preventing a river monster invasion?
Wow.
River monster invasion.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm picturing like a bunch of, soda bottles and like instead of like a ship in a bottle, it's like a Godzilla in a bottle. something kind of along those lines. I cannot wait for this one.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you trap the Godzilla in the bottle, then it can't wreak havoc upon Tokyo. But
Yeah,
Boom.
absolutely. Everybody knows that.
Problem solved.
Laura, why don't you get us started with surfing bats?
Happy to. So, we know that dolphins can surf. There's plenty of videos of them kind of like surfing along the waves, and even dogs. Basically, like the early YouTube days were full of viral videos of dogs surfing, and there's also a very, very fun little sequence in the credit sequence to the 2003 cinematic classic Blue Crush that shows some surfing dogs. Not that I've seen that movie a lot, like 3 times in the theater, but here nor there. Apparently, bats can surf too. But not exactly in the way you might be thinking. They can surf on air. A study published earlier this month in the journal Science found that when some of these winged mammals take on long-haul journeys, they will surf along warm fronts of storms. This enables them to make it a little bit further while spending less energy. They've essentially harnessed the whole idea of working smarter, not harder. And they're taking advantage of the air in order to travel at a longer distance with a lot less work. And that is always something I even double checked right before coming on to the show. Bats are mammals. They're the only mammals that can really sustain long flights. And I think that that's always like one of those fun facts to share at parties, because I think sometimes people assume that they're birds or maybe something like a platypus where they're kind of in the middle of both worlds, but they are in fact mammals, and they are one of the larger groups of mammals.
Yeah, they're fuzzy little guys.
They are.
So when you say surf on air, like, are there videos of this? Have you seen it? Like, what is it? Can I still picture the sunglasses and the little board under their legs?
I'm not in the business of dashing dreams, so I'm going to say yes, you can still picture that, but we will get to that as far as like if we can actually see this just yet. So for the going forward, picture whatever you want. Picture, they can be on boards, just maybe not at the beach, but they could still have the sunglasses on. I think that's acceptable. They're super sensitive to light. Of course they would need them. So this particular study looked at a group of common noctule bats. These bats are found across parts of Europe, Asia, North Africa, and they're one of only 4 bat species that are known to migrate across all of Europe. So they can kind of spread along the whole continent. They're pretty small. They're roughly the size of a human palm, although if you're scared of bats, that might seem kind of big. They have these broad brown ears and a distinctive like mushroom-shaped nose. I'll be sure to include some pictures in the show notes because they are pretty darn cute if you are like me and you like bats. They also have these long, narrow wings that they use to fly in a fairly straight line up at higher altitudes and speeds. And these wings are apparently pretty good for surfing, so dream dash number 1, I think they pretty much can rely on their wings and no surfboard, unfortunately. But who knows? We might still not know that. For now, that maybe they just haven't found the right surfboard shaper. Who knows?
There's much to discover.
There's much to discover with surfing bats. So every spring, female noctule bats migrate for up to 1,000 miles from parts of northern Europe down to southern Europe, where they roost, and then they fly back north. In the past, biologists have tried using drones, weather radar, and even ultrasonic sound recordings to examine this migration, but there's been some mixed success with those methods. In this new study, they decided to try something different. A team from the Max Planck Institute of Animal Behavior tracked 71 bats. They took these tiny little sensors that weigh about a gram and attached them to the bats with a temporary surgical glue. The sensor stayed on for roughly 14 days, so about 2 weeks. And in that time, they recorded all sorts of data. So the bats' acceleration and their core temperature. They also assessed their activity levels and some environmental conditions like wind and temperature data. And these sensors were pretty sensitive. They were taking these recordings up to 1,000 times per day. So even though 2 weeks doesn't seem like a huge time period, 1,000 times a day over 2 weeks, roughly 14,000 readings there. So you can kind of make some detailed patterns with that. So they attach these tags every spring for about 3 years, so multiplied even more by 3 years, to a group of bats that are based in Switzerland. And they focused exclusively on those migratory females. The sensor data revealed that changes in air temperature had a strong association with their migratory flight. the bats were much more likely to begin their movements just before warm fronts came in, leaving on nights where the air pressure dropped and the temperature spiked. So they were basically leaving before incoming storms and then surfing along the air movements that come from warm fronts. These are things like drops in barometric pressure, temperature, and better wind. If you've ever surfed, waves come in sets of about 7, depending upon where you are. And a lot of time is spent kind of waiting to examine and figure out maybe which wave in the set is best. Is it that 4th one? Is it that 5th? This is kind of along those lines, but a little bit obviously in the air, not the water. It has more to do with some of the cues actually in the air and not just so much visual. It's kind of a feeling. Now, this isn't to say that they were exclusively going surfing before storms, which is also not something I can endorse. That's very dangerous. Don't go out and do that, whether you're a bat or a human. Do not, if they're
any bats listening.
Any bats listening.
Yeah.
Do not make perilous journeys.
Don't swim in the sea and don't take.
We'll have to release like a translated high frequency echolocation version of the warning.
That's
so
the dream.
They know.
I'll get on that. That's
on
actually brilliant.
My list of possible translations and transcriptions I could get going for weirdest thing. Bat, high on the list.
Bat and whale, both ends.
And
of the
I was gonna
spectrum.
say it could be like instead of Dory speaking whale, we could be speaking bat. I mean, we should be at this point in society.
The old men who email me about vocal fry are gonna love this.
Yeah, tired of vocal fry? Try shrieking.
Go the complete opposite end of vocal fry. I love it. So yes, bats listening, might be a little perilous. Humans listening, do not go out surfing before a storm, unless you're super duper experienced. So this isn't to say that they can't migrate when the air temperature might be colder or there's less wind support, but it means that they're wasting up some of that precious energy. And kind of in addition to this surfing ability, the sensors showed a little bit more about their elusive migrations. Lauren, this kind of goes to your first question about video. Unfortunately, we do not have a video of this.
Thankfully, this is an audio medium.
Exactly. Right. I used to work in video, and the stress of, oh my gosh, can I cover this? Do I have footage of this? Still wakes me up at night. And also, we don't quite know about their migrations in general because they are more difficult than even whales to track. And whales are pretty darn tough to track, but bats are even harder. And also, unlike birds and whales, they don't have a standard migration corridor. It's not like they're not quite as seasonal where they leave one place right away. Their migratory patterns are a little bit more vague. Even like the authors on the study had assumed that they were following some sort of a unified path, but they found that they were actually moving in a more generalized northeast direction. I'm not even pointing northeast in my own house. It's just a hand motion. Let me start that. I'm literally pointing southwest. Northeast.
The fact that you know that, incredible. I would have to spend a lot more time thinking about that.
I'm very excited about gardening, so I've been in the spring in the new house. So I've been tracking where this. I've been like meticulously looking because I want to know what I can put where. But that's that could be a whole series right there, like city girl. Shore girl turned city girl gardens. Anyway, weird tangent. So they thought that the bats might be going in some sort of prescribed path, the way that whales and some birds will go, but they were going in a more general northeast directions. And they also found that the bats are alternating these migratory flights with frequent stops. And that's not just because they really like visiting various rest stops and seeing what sort of food items. It's just because they need to feed continuously. They eat.
That's also why I visit rest stops. So.
I mean, I'm more of a, if I really have to use the bathroom, than a food rest stop visitor. But I feel you. I mean, I've driven the opposite direction to go to a rest stop with better food. So
personally, I like a little roadside attraction. Like there's that stretch in Iowa, I think, that has like the biggest rake in the world or something. I stopped to see that once. It was fine.
The last time I stopped for a roadside attraction, it was for what used to be the biggest garden gnome, Noam Chomsky, who's up in upstate New York. Yeah, he's great. I do think that if I'm remembering correctly, he is no longer the largest gnome, but he's
because he's
great.
Shrunk or someone made a bigger one.
Someone made a bigger gnome. They could not let Noam Chomsky just live.
That gnome competition is fierce. I mean, I was going to guess Lucy the elephant, but then I was like, no, that's nothing for you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I definitely saw Lucy the elephant, but it's been a long time. I was at the winter train show at the New York Botanical Gardens, which is a great time if folks haven't been. The one up in the Bronx, not the one in Brooklyn.
Which is also great. Don't just the one
also
in Brooklyn.
great.
Huge
No,
lily pads
also
in that
great.
one.
But I feel like there are a lot of people who live in Brooklyn and people don't pay as much attention to the botanical garden in the Bronx. And they have this awesome train show where they do miniatures of a bunch of New York attractions made out of plant materials. It's great. If you want to see like the Empire State Building made out of acorns, it's amazing. Lot more artistically profound than it might sound. But anyway, the point of this tangent is that I walked in this year and there was a giant, beautiful elephant. And I was like, Lucy the elephant is in New Jersey, not New York. Why is she here? And then, of course, my husband was like, Rachel, there's also a giant elephant that used to be in New York. It was a hotel. And I was like, well,
fine.
Whatever. They probably copied Lucy.
This is like a Russian nesting doll of tangents. I can't even totally remember how we got here.
Yeah.
Neither.
I got it. I'll get
roadhead
us
attractions.
You're going to surf
Rest stop.
the
I'm
storm
gonna
wave
surf
back to
Stopping
back.
for snacks.
I'm going to surf this tangent and get us back. Watch. Just watch. In three, 2, 1. They also found that the bats were having to stop fairly frequently. And this wasn't for a roadside attraction like the largest garden gnome or the beloved Lucy the elephant in South Jersey. It was to do everyone's arguably favorite rest stop activity, but for eating. Nocturnal bats eat a wide variety of insects like most bats, and they must refuel at least once and sometimes twice per night. Unlike other animals with their migrations, they do not gain a bunch of weight beforehand to sustain them. So they need to stop and feed, and their quick little metabolisms just take all of that lovely protein from the insects and gobbles it right up. This also makes their migration pattern look a little bit more hoppy, kind of like a bunny, and not a nice little straight shot like if they were riding a current or something like that. The other last little fun thing that they found is that they were flying a little bit further than expected in one leap. They can make it up to 238 miles in a night, much further than the previous estimates.
That's better than a Tesla on a single charge.
Really, seriously.
So
And, while these sensors are a big leap in understanding the species, we're still a ways away from tracking their complete yearly cycle, and also, like Lauren alluded to, getting some lovely surfing video of them. According to the authors, this was the first time that they had that we have this ability to harness this seemingly invisible wind energy and how it is supporting how these bats moves. Now, they're also not the only bats that have been recorded doing this. So this study also complements another one that was recently published in Movement Ecology that looked at another migratory bat species in Europe. It also surfs on warm fronts as it crosses the English Channel into Europe. When and if I ever swim across the English Channel, I would like that as well, although something tells me I will get flagged for cheating if I try to fly across.
Maybe the thing to hope for is that you'll look up and a bat will be
like
surfing along
right
with
above
you.
me, and I'll be able to be like, hello, I've advocated for you. And it'll help me get across faster. But that's way, way, way down the road. When these bats do this across the English Channel, it more than doubles their speed from that study. So all of these studies on this elusive bat migration, depending on the species, can have implications for bat conservation. Bats are one of those species that can run into wind turbines, and Europe has a lot of wind energy and it's only growing. So if we know a little bit more about when and where the bats are going to be, the turbines could maybe turn off for a little bit so that they can avoid collisions. Now, I love ending my segments with a question because I'm that annoying journalist. And so if you could tag along on any animal's migration, what animal would it be?
Ooh. That's a really good question.
I guess it depends what you want to get out of it, because there are, I guess if you're trying to go for like distance, there are definitely some birds that I would be like really interested to track. Oh God, I need to think of the name really quick. Godwits. There are godwits that breed in the Arctic and spend the off season in New Zealand. And I said Arctic, not Antarctic. So they're literally doing like a trans global migration. Wow. Pretty crazy. Thousands of miles. That'd be pretty sick to follow along. I'd have to get in better shape, though, I think.
The only thing I can think of is like the turtles from Finding Nemo. I just suddenly have forgotten every other migratory animal, but it does seem like that would be a really fun one. So
also very surfy and a lot.
Yeah, very surfy.
Yeah, mine's definitely Pacific humpback whales, not so much Atlantic, because I like how they feed in Alaska and then kind of calve and hang out in Hawaii. So kind of like what Lauren was saying, it depends on what you want to get out of it. You get to spend your time in very different climates. And I love seasons. I love that kind of change. So I think that swimming along with them would be wonderful.
Actually, I might follow eels since we don't know what they're doing.
You'd find out you'd solve it.
Yeah. And I would like promise not to tell. I'd be like, you guys, it'll go to the grave with me. I just want to know.
Yeah. So I'm a cool human.
That's
I don't
developing that eel technology. That's after bats, though, right? We're going to develop the speaking bats first, and then we'll go to eels. We just have to. I just want to make sure I have my priorities and marching orders.
Listen, perhaps I'm already working on eel communication. There would be signs, but I wouldn't say anything.
You heard it here first, folks.
Well, what a great image. Looking forward to the day when we can finally capture some video of these little guys. But in the meantime, I'll just look up pictures of them and imagine them on surfboards.
Have you seen the video, though, of the bats on the treadmills?
Yes.
Oh,
because that is a really wild video that you can watch.
Is. Any research video involving animal on treadmill is probably going to be a good time. But
you kind of can't go wrong.
The tinier and weirder the animals are, the better.
Sea slug on a treadmill.
Oh my gosh! I don't think that sea slug's going to do what you want to do.
Just roll off.
Hey, listen, maybe there's some important science in there. Who am I to say?
You never know.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with some more facts. Who doesn't love enjoying the finer things in life? But even if you love a little luxury, that doesn't mean it's always easy to afford it. That's why I love Quince. Quince is your new go-to for luxury essentials at affordable prices. Quince offers a range of high-quality items at prices within reach, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. They also have washable silk tops and dresses, organic cotton sweaters, and 14-karat gold jewelry. And all of those items are priced at 50 to 80% less than similar brands. Quince says that by partnering directly with top factories, they can cut out the cost of the middleman and pass those savings on to you. And more importantly, according to Quince, they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices, plus premium fabrics and finishes. My cashmere sweater from Quince has become a real staple in my wardrobe. It's really comfortable and fashionable, and of course, it also came at a great price. Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/weirdest for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/weirdest to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/weirdest. Have you ever woken up with a funky symptom like a swollen, itchy eye or a weird-looking rash, and then immediately Googled it or searched TikTok to see what's wrong with you? I mean, we've all gone down rabbit holes like that. But what you should really do is seek out actual medical advice. And ZocDoc can help. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking in-network appointments with more than 100,000 doctors across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, primary care to urgent care, and more. You can use ZocDoc's filters to find doctors who take your insurance, are located nearby, and are a good fit for any medical need you might have. Plus, you can check to make sure that they are highly rated by verified patients. Once you find the right doctor, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time slot that works for you, and click to instantly book a visit. You can even score same-day appointments. I was really psyched to see ZocDoc come up as one of our sponsors because I've genuinely been using it for years. It makes my life so much easier. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/weirdest to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/weirdest. ZocDoc.com/weirdest. Okay, we're back, and I'm going to jump into my fact, which, as I said, is about a submarine sandwich, not a hoagie. So let's set the scene. You may think of the year 1969 as, a year when humans explored new heights, but really
I have a
October
song about it.
Yeah.
We went to the moon in 1969. That's when we made a landing that was lunar. All right, I'll stop.
What
you have a beautiful voice, Laura.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the truth is that it was October 16th, 1968, when some intrepid explorers really set off on a journey that changed the course of humankind. So these three intrepid explorers were about to take a submersible named Alvin for a spin off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. Alvin had just had its first dip a little more than 3 years earlier, and this vessel was no stranger to adventure. In 1966, it had been used to locate a submerged 1.45 megaton hydrogen bomb that had been lost in a U.S. Air Force midair accident over Spain. That's a big oopsie, but thanks, Alvin. Then in 1967, this is great, it was attacked by a swordfish at 2,000 feet deep, and I guess that was enough of a to-do that it got written down. The swordfish did get trapped in some of Alvin's hardware and was brought back up with Alvin and then was cooked for dinner.
I mean...
Yeah, swordfish lost that one.
Yeah, I was going to ask who won that battle.
No, Alvin won, swordfish 0. But this was not going to be Alvin's day, October 16th, 1968. So this vessel, which was under the purview of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, it was being lowered into the water. They were going to look for some whales, a pretty chill assignment for Alvin, given all of the H-bomb and swordfish adventures that had been on. But then a cable snapped and it started to slide into the water. This was a very slow sinking situation. And luckily, the hatch was still open, so everyone got out. Apparently the pilot sprained his ankle, but that was the worst of it. But unfortunately, the hatch was still open. So Alvin dipped under the water, sank 5,000 feet down, and settled at the bottom of the sea. Not so great. And it would actually take almost a year for Alvin to make it back to the surface. There was some poor weather, and then there was some difficulty getting a hold of an appropriate rescue vessel. I guess it just wasn't super urgent to save this very embarrassingly sunk submarine. And then finally, a little less than a year later, I think it was Labor Day, Alvin comes up mostly unscathed, definitely in need of an overhaul because it had been waterlogged for a year. But
kind of amazing that it would work at all after that, after being so down for so long and at such a depth. That's
yes.
kind of
well,
remarkable.
I'm sure all of the radios and stuff like that had to be totally replaced. But I think structurally, it was mostly intact. In fact, it's actually still operational today, though apparently it's had at this point all of its parts swapped out over time.
Submarine.
Yes, I was a very literal ship of Theseus kind of situation.
Amazing.
So it's arguable whether Alvin still exists, but the Alvin is still in operation. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the Alvin submarine or philosophical paradoxes. We're here to talk about some sandwiches because when those three crew members set out in October of 1968, they had packed lunches to eat when they were, down there in the drink.
Very important.
And then when folks took a peek inside Alvin on Labor Day of 1969, they found that lunch was in surprisingly pristine condition.
No.
Yeah. So there was this metal lunchbox where the food was stashed, and when they opened it, they found some apples. They found bologna sandwiches wrapped in, everything says wax paper, but in the pictures it looks like there was also some plastic wrap, which did exist at the time. So I think there was also plastic wrap on there. And there were also these thermoses full of beef bouillon. Delicious. Onion.
Maybe it got more salty. Ooh.
Yeah. Well, actually, I will get into that in a second.
Okay, please do.
So There's a picture of the late Woods Hole researcher Cliff Wingett, who, side note, according to his 2006 obituary, lived in Sandwich, Massachusetts. So thank you for that, Cliff. R.I.P.
No.
It's all connecting.
It's all connected.
Going to be the foundation of a great new conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
This was destined the day he was born. Like,
yeah, completely.
I mean, this is perfect.
Or did he move to Sandwich, Massachusetts after this incredible day? Who knows? But so there's a picture of him holding up one of those sandwiches, possibly having just taken a bite. Like, the picture kind of looks like it's been nibbled on. Nice. Cannot confirm or disprove this. But we know that they said that the broth tasted fine, so they certainly weren't opposed to sampling the goods.
That's always my first question when like archaeologists find like a 2,000-year-old cask of wine. I'm like, what did it taste like?
Exactly.
I'm so glad that these oceanographers or whatever they were decided to do some real science and tell us how the bouillon tasted.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a note that, from general appearance, taste, smell, consistency, and preliminary bacteriological and biochemical assays, these food materials were strikingly well preserved. So they said it themselves. Somebody tasted it. The thermoses themselves had actually been partially crushed by the pressure of the ocean. So the seal of the thermos had been compromised, and they noted that there was actually some salt water had gotten in there. So yeah, it was the bouillon was probably even saltier. But they were like, yeah, this bouillon still tastes like broth that we would drink. They did say that the apples looked pickled. Their words, not mine. I don't really know what a pickled apple looks like, but I think, it was the kind of wrinkly and waterlogged, but not rotten is what I would imagine. And there were 6 sandwiches. They were just slightly soggy, otherwise seemed pretty unchanged. The bologna had gone gray on the outside, but was still pink in the middle.
Okay, so wait,
so it's like a bullseye?
Yeah, unclear.
When you say slightly soggy, these were submerged in water, right? They had to be fully.
So that was one of my main questions. I think what happened is that they were in this metal lunchbox, and then they were wrapped in both plastic and wax paper from the photos. Mm-hmm. So I think it really was the lunchbox was not full of water.
Okay.
It was maybe just some excess moisture that wouldn't have gotten in.
Yeah.
Had it not been,
or maybe it was full of water, but they were wrapped well enough that the sandwiches apparently had not been fully soaked.
This is just an advertisement for cling wrap, I think.
Yeah.
Or
for real.
It reminds me of last year when the Stanley Cup craze started and somebody had posted a picture of their Stanley surviving a car accident, coming out unscathed in a car accident. It's hey, totally. Buy this thermos. It can withstand ridiculous amounts of pressure and, being 5,000 feet under the water.
Yeah.
The gray bologna and slightly soggy sandwich, though, makes me question exactly why the scientists may have taken a bite. But that's okay. That's between him and God.
Agreed. Exactly.
I would hope that there was, some sort of medical professional seated right next to him when he
seriously
that's
doubt
what
there
I would
was.
want, but ugh.
Based on what I know about dudes doing science in the 60s, I bet there was not.
No.
But they did, they didn't just, giggle and take a bite and write down some notes. There's a 1971 paper in Science about this lunchbox because
amazing.
They did everything they could think of to study it. And this is a quote from the paper. The food exhibited a degree of preservation that, in the case of the fruit, equaled that of careful storage. And in the case of starch and proteinaceous materials, aka bologna, appeared to surpass by far that of normal refrigeration. First of all, love proteinaceous materials for bologna.
Yeah. Talk about a way to really, beef up your...
Oh, no.
Talk about a way to really beef up your meat.
Unfortunately, it does sound like one of the phrases that was used in like the Boar's Head Listeria documentation.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
So true.
Yes. Oh.
And yeah, then they stored the food in like normal refrigerator conditions, and everything spoiled within a few weeks as if it had started out fresh. And so they were like, what was going on down there? Why didn't this food go bad in the ocean? And they confirmed that there was a normal amount of oxygen in the water of the sub. They even confirmed that there wasn't anything leaking that could have served as like an accidental preservative. And then they checked, that the seals of the thermoses had broken under the pressure of the water. So like the contents hadn't even been isolated. So they were like, okay, what's up with this? And based on all of their testing, they figured out that the spoilage had been happening at 1% of the rate it would have at the surface. And that was when they controlled for temperature. But why? They were like, are there fewer microbes down there, or like the wrong kinds of microbes? Or was it something to do with the cold and or the pressure? And the truth is they like didn't really come up with an answer. But we have some ideas. It was probably the pressure. And researchers now, I was reading an article by Gregory Barber in Wired. There's a lot of, this article was about sort of like why this interesting scientific question is relevant to our interest today. And I was like, I don't really care. I just want to talk about the sandwiches. But it is true. Yeah. It is true that scientists are very interested in sort of how microbial decay works in the ocean, specifically with regards to carbon sinking, carbon sequestration, because, when things decompose in the ocean, that's like part of how carbon gets released back up. And pretty recently, researchers were like studying this, and they found that when they pulled water up to the deck of a research vessel to like measure microbial activity, they were seeing like pretty normal microbial activity, very like hungry microbes. And they were like, we know there aren't actually enough nutrients to feed microbes that hungry in the deep ocean. So we know that's like that some kind of mismatch is going on. So pretty recently, researchers started sending autonomous instruments to actually like incubate microbes down in the deep to see what goes on there. And they found that very few of them, like around 10%, sort of thrive in extreme pressure. And the rest are not very good at living at that pressure. So they don't like metabolize as much material. So probably those are microbes that are adapted to live closer to the surface and just kind of float their way down. But then there's this relatively small percentage of microbes that like are happy and hungry, which is how you get, like a whale fall decomposing at the bottom of the ocean. So the best guess is just at the pressures of, 5,000 feet under the sea, there just weren't enough microbes that were up to the task of making this food decompose. But we don't really know for sure. There's still so much we don't know about how the ocean works in this regard,
logically,
which is
that
kind of wild.
Logically, that would make some sense because not to anthropomorphize some microbes here, but they might be like, ugh, I don't know what that is. I don't want to eat it. That's not in my dietary repertoire. Bologna. What's bologna? Or so it logically
it's like a
without
Victorian child getting a flaming hot Cheeto.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it would kind of make some sense that they were, that they wouldn't have eaten it just purely out of like, I don't know what that is, therefore I'm not going to take a bite of it. They weren't as curious as the scientists. So
sure, yeah.
I could see that working maybe.
Yeah. And also just, not a lot of microbes that are thriving at that at those pressures. So less activity, less stuff going on. Mm-hmm. What's cool is that, even though in the 60s they weren't really talking about, the carbon sink of the ocean, people were talking about fertilizing the ocean by sending organic waste down there as a way to rebuild fish populations. Ooh. And the researchers very wisely saw this sandwich as, a cautionary tale against that idea. They were like, listen, we don't really know how it works down there. And if this sandwich didn't decompose, maybe all of our trash would not decompose and we should not just put it down there as a way to feed the fish.
I love
they were
that
correct.
Just like a goofy bologna sandwich is like what prevented us from filling the deep oceans
Right?
of trash.
Right?
People
yeah.
are like really incredible for just what we're willing to do.
So true. That is so true. So yeah, that's the whole story of this sandwich. I was really hoping I could get more information on how the taste test happened, how it proceeded. Longtime listeners know I love talking about people being willing to pop weird stuff into their mouths and that ending up in scientific papers like the Kentucky meat rain. And so yeah, we'll probably not get more information on that, but there are a delightful number of, institutional blog posts and, of course, this one scientific paper about this submarine sandwich. So, yeah, I love it.
Thank you, Alvin Bologna Sandwich. Thank you.
Yeah. My big takeaway from this is that I should replace my refrigerator with just like a portal to the deep ocean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just
and
sending
then,
down a fishing
occasionally,
line anytime I want a snack.
Yeah. And then occasionally a swordfish will come up and try to mess up your day, and maybe you'll win.
I could take him.
Yeah.
You could take him. Oh, yeah. My money's on you, Lauren.
All right. We're going to take one more break, and then we'll be back with one more fact. Do you like your money? Unfortunately, traditional big wireless carriers like your money too. So if you're tired of spending hundreds on big wireless bills, bogus fees, and free perks, Mint Mobile might just be right for you with plans starting from $15 a month. I'm not currently a Mint Mobile customer, but I'm definitely checking it out because $15 a month is a lot less than what I'm currently paying at a big wireless carrier. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. If you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/weirdest. That's mintmobile.com/weirdest. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5GB plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Okay, we're back. And Lauren, start talking to me about some monsters, please.
Absolutely, will do. So I'm gonna start this off with like a little kind of visual guided meditation. I am bringing visuals to the audio medium, kind of like bringing a knife to a gunfight, but it's going to be a good idea this time. Okay, so just go with me. Imagine that it's a beautiful sunshine day. You are getting into a motorboat on a wide green river with like all of your bros. You're going to go fishing with your pals. You've got a cooler chock full of brewskis. Everything is going so well. And then as soon as you start moving your boat along the surface of the water, you are bombarded by these 20 to 30 pound fish catapulting up in every direction. They're landing on your boat. One or two might like clip you in the shoulder or head. Your cooler gets knocked. Your beer, it's spilled. It's just like a total maelstrom of massive flying fish. Obviously, your leisurely afternoon fishing is canceled. Now you're in survival mode. You just have to escape fish storm. So this is a 100% completely scientifically accurate description of what it looks like when silver carp take over a waterway. So silver carp, they're an invasive species in the US, originally from East Asia. And in their natural habitat, this like level of fish-based violence and chaos doesn't happen because they're a species kept in check by other species in a beautiful ecosystem web. But in the US, in the rivers they've been introduced to, they've outcompeted native fish, multiplied prolifically for decades, and basically, the river population just becomes all silver carp. And these fish, again, are big fish. We're talking up to 3 feet long, like record holders above 50 pounds. When they jump at you, it's like a serious it gets serious. I don't know
I
that I
remember-
can take one. Yeah.
I remember covering this a few years ago, and a researcher compared it to being hit in the face with a bowling ball, which has stayed with me.
Yeah, that'll do it.
So these giant invasive fish, they, contrary to what you might think, are not predators. The reason that they outcompete native fish is because they're just so darn good at eating everything. They eat plankton and phytoplankton and algae. They're basically grazers at kind of the surface section of a water body, because that's where all the photosynthesis is happening. That's where all the light is. That's where all the tasty stuff to eat is. But unfortunately, all of those tiny plankton also form the fundamental base of the food web for every other species. And so by being the biggest fish at the buffet, they unfortunately prevent other fish from getting their plate full. So anyway, big invasive fish obviously causes some major problems for recreational boaters, but maybe more critically than that, causes environmental and ecological mayhem. And their invasions can cause populations of native species to crash. The whole ecosystem changes. And to add insult to injury, silver carp don't even taste good. So we can't eat our way out of the problem. They basically have no economic or culinary value. It's a big bummer all around. You can't boat. And even if you could, the fish you were planning on catching, they've been outcompeted. They've been replaced by these gross dive bombing carp. So
I famously can't cook at all, but my competitive side is like, no, I'm going to make that carp. I want to solve the problem by coming up with a recipe to make this taste good. Won't happen because literally cannot cook at all, but wow. Anyway.
I mean, look, if a man can eat just the grayest, soggiest bologna sandwich for science,
so
then you
true.
can try and cook a carp.
Have they tried
Yeah.
feeding the carp the bologna sandwiches instead of the natural things in the ecosystem to maybe... Is that a solution we've looked at? I'm just asking questions.
We are over here innovating, and that's why we're also going to invent ways to talk to bats. So these silver carp, they're already present in a bunch of major U.S. rivers. They were introduced in kind of the mid 20th century in the US, and actually intentionally, because of their super voracious appetite, they were introduced to the US so that they could be in agricultural ponds and like wastewater treatment facilities and eat up algae that was like clogging wastewater treatment centers or just making cow ponds gross, I guess. But surprise, surprise, they escaped containment, and now they're in the Mississippi River, the Ohio River, the Missouri River, like the biggest rivers in the country have a carp problem, and they are on the cusp of another huge territory gain. Silver carp are very close to entering the Great Lakes, and from there, all other adjoining rivers, the Great Lakes Basin, big stuff in freshwater. So yeah, they're on, or the carp are in the Illinois River, and they are less than 50 miles from Lake Michigan. If they clear that last gap, they can spread through all of the lake's shallows, and then like the entire watershed is slowly going to be, or maybe not even that slowly, will be invaded by these fish.
I'm just watching Jess's face.
Yeah, Jess is not happy.
Jess is in Chicago, right? Oh,
Yeah.
man. So thrilled for you. Yeah, so obviously big problem. But here's the kicker. They've been stuck in the same spot almost 50 miles from the Great Lakes for about a decade now. It's been 10 years, which is plenty of time for a fish species to make it 50 miles. So what's the deal?
Skill issue, I would say.
Yeah, skill issue. You just got to train them up. Well, so scientists have been confused by this too, and increasingly they're becoming convinced that what's holding the fish back is, drumroll please, the city of Chicago, and specifically the city's urban water pollution problem.
Jess's.
Yeah, Chicago pride right there. The Midwest
You
has
should
it
be
on
so
lock.
proud, Jess. Oh,
Yeah. So a few studies have looked into this, have looked into like the water quality around the Chicago area and tried to see how it's impacting these carp. One of the most recent, which was published last year in Scientific Reports, evaluated how these fish react to water collected from the Chicago area in the lab. So researchers, well, I mean, like kind of, yeah. The researchers took a bunch of these carp, they raised them up in nice clean water, and then suddenly exposed them to a tank full of Chicago area water. And the fish like literally froze. They stopped moving. Their metabolic rates skyrocketed up. It was like a very clear stress response. Their body started working very hard just to compensate for whatever was present in the water, because they actually didn't even isolate specific compounds or anything. They didn't like formulate this water to be fish repellent. They just took it from Chicago, and then suddenly it was like the fish could not deal.
Wow.
And in this study, they also had a control species, which was a native species called golden shiners. And these fish, they like seem to deal with whatever's happening around Chicago just fine. That doesn't necessarily mean that like pollution is fine for all native species, but it does signal that there is like something about the silver carp, or there's some sensitivity there that isn't uniform among all fish species. And a previous study from 2019 from the same lab, they actually like collected carp from different points along the Illinois River. And the closer they got to Chicago, they started finding signs of liver damage in the fish. And
Wow.
so clearly like whatever is in the water is having an effect. And, you know, this is kind of, there's been some debate, but the science is building to say that actually pollution is playing a role here. And fortunately or unfortunately, that inadvertent barrier is maybe disappearing because the Illinois River is getting a lot cleaner. There have been infrastructure updates as well as focused water quality efforts that have made Chicago's waters less polluted in recent decades. And like, we love it. We love a good environmental effort and like remediation and water recovery. But soon, you know, there might not be enough pollution to hold the silver carp back. And again, before you get the wrong idea, that doesn't mean that like any environmental expert is like,
Right.
we have to keep polluting the river. You guys,
We can't stop silver carp anymore because of woke. So.
yeah, you gotta hold the presses, like release the sewage. We gotta keep those fish back. But no, I talked with Corey Suski, who's a scientist at the University of Illinois, who was responsible for those two studies I mentioned. And he said emphatically, quote, "We are not promoting pollution as carp control." But he, you know, he added that
Sad that they have to say it, but I understand.
I understand. Yeah, it makes sense
In this
why
day
they
and
have
age,
to.
you do have to specify.
Yeah.
But, you know, he added that it does mean that as we continue to clean the river, which hopefully we do, we have to plan ahead and prepare and have some course of action. Otherwise, we're just going to, you know, leave one environmental catastrophe behind for another one. And the Great Lakes, they're the biggest freshwater system in the world. So to you know, subject them to yet another terrible species invasion would be, you know, more than just a bummer. It would be like a massive environmental cost. There would be economic costs. It's really expensive to manage invasive species once they've made it into a waterway. There's a really long history of this in the Great Lakes too. If you want, you can look up in your own time what happened with the introduction of sea lampreys into the lakes.
Oh, yeah.
But Illinois...
Is
Oh, sorry.
Didn't Illinois also try electrified gates?
Oh,
at one
I'm getting
point
to that.
for them. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're
completely.
getting
Okay.
to electric fences.
I just want to make sure it was the same one. I was like, wait, this can't be more than one.
Well, and in
there is
addition
actually
to
there are more that there's so many invasive
God.
carp.
Okay, never mind.
well, and in addition to it being an ecological disaster, what if flora gets hit with a carp? Unacceptable. So
Unacceptable.
full stop. We gotta do something about it.
You know, the
We
fish
ride at
are
dawn.
a legitimate safety hazard. I mean, like, maybe we can link video in the show notes, but you can watch people just get like whacked with these things. So yeah, the point is like pollution's going away. It's been holding the carp back. We think we need something else to hold them back in its place because we can't just keep putting raw sewage into our urban waterways. So I guess a caveat to that is we don't actually know if raw sewage is the problem. It could be industrial pollution. There's all sorts of things that could be in the water preventing the carp from moving
The
forward.
dye from when they dye the river green at St. Patrick's Day.
Oh yeah, that's entirely it. We don't need any more science. We've
Problem
solved it.
solved.
Yeah.
Again.
And there are other tools available, you know, besides pollution that could help prevent the carp from entering the lake. There is already this big electric barrier, basically also 50 miles south southwest of Chicago. I'm also trying to figure out directions now with my hands. But in southwest of Chicago in Illinois, there's this electric fence that is specifically in place to try and keep invasive species like silver carp and a handful of other invasive carp species from entering the lakes. Other research has suggested that like existing locks and dams can just kind of naturally slow carp progression, although some newer studies indicate that they can just kind of jump over them depending on the size of the fish. There's also been a culling program in place for a while now where basically wildlife managers just go out and kill as many carp as they can. And it's kind of like, has that been working as well as it needs to? Unclear, but they're going to keep doing it. And then more recently, there's also been bubble nets and sound barriers that people are trying to use to try and deter the carps in like the least environmentally damaging way possible. But in my conversations with Corey Susky, he basically said that like moving forward, we might need to keep innovating newer solutions and keep trying things out because there might not be any single silver bullet to stop the silver carp. Yeah. And I mean, the thing that really strikes me about this is that it's kind of like an environmental trolley problem, right? Like how do you, as a conservation manager, how do you weigh the cost of something like cleaning up a river system or allowing a fish to go on its way and cause mayhem? Yeah. But that's not my job to decide. So, right. I just get to talk about it on a podcast.
I'm not from Chicago, but like I feel like it, there's a lot of vibe overlap with Philly. And if we had a similar situation in the Schuylkill, there would be a real sense of pride that our water was too gross to let these fish in. So that I love that.
I was going to say,
aspect.
It feels like when tourists come to Chicago and they're like, this is too cold. I can't be here. And all of us we're like wearing shorts and Ugg boots. We're like, this is normal, dude. Come on.
I've done one swim in the Schuylkill, and it was one of the only swims I ever quit because it was too hot, because it's a very shallow river, and it was like 90 degrees outside. The water was like 80, and I like had to take an ice bath. I literally thought I was going to die, but it was it was cleaner than I was expecting.
Yeah,
I'll give it that.
One of my favorite things is being present when somebody who's not from the Philly area learns how Schuylkill is pronounced for the first time.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Good. It always hits right.
It does. It does. It's a cool river. I'll have to.
Well, it's a hot river. But.
Yeah.
It is so hot. Like cool again, this was also like late August. I mean, it was a hot day. Yeah. Like it was. It was only 8 miles. It was not a long one, but I was still just like ready to pass out after that.
Oh man.
Almost gave up, but I.
Calling
didn't.
8 miles not a long swim is like
yeah. I'm a weirdo. It's okay.
That's incredible. But yeah, I guess the Schuylkill is not like ideal conditions for preserving sandwiches then.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
No. Hoagie is just completely fall apart there. Well, thanks so much for a great episode, you guys. So many great weird facts today. Always a pleasure to have both of you.
It's so good to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you, Bologna Sandwich.
The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week is produced by all of our hosts, including me, Rachel Feltman, along with Jess Bodie, who also serves as our audio engineer and editor extraordinaire. Our theme music is by Billy Cadden. Our logo is by Katie Beloff. If you have questions, suggestions, or weird stories to share, tweet us at weirdest_thing. Thanks for listening, weirdos.